Hi everyone, today I'm going to present my work using a video scribe that I've designed myself. As this is an oral presentation, I will deliver the narration of this scribe orally today standing at the back of the room. The reason for me standing at the back of the room is to prevent me from distracting your concentration on the screen. You will have access to this scribe later on YouTube, which will have a recorded narration on it, and the link for this is on your educational handout. I'm here today to introduce you to the concept of individualized budgeting. I'm going to do this by explaining what has happened in the past, what's happening at present, and what the plan is for the future in relation to individualized budgeting in Ireland. Historically in Ireland, the Catholic Church had a massive influence on health, social care and education, and from 1922 to 1953, informal arrangements were made between the Church and State, where the Irish state gave land and capital in exchange for the Church providing services. The legacy of this can be seen recently in the St. Vincent's Hospital and the National Maternity Hospital fiasco. After the Health Act of 1953, family and advocate-led organisations became the driving force for change, eventually forming voluntary organisations and non-governmental organisations, which were funded largely by the government through Section 65 of this Act, which was later changed to Section 38 and 39 in the Health Act of 2004. During the 1960s, the medicalised model of service provision was dominant in Ireland, and even though the Celtic Tiger roared from 1994 to 2000, the healthcare system in Ireland was still behind the rest of Europe. The HSE was formed in 2005, who were and still are responsible for administration, management and execution of health policy in Ireland. In 2007, Ireland signed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, but we are still waiting for it to be ratified. Since 2011, documents like Time to Move On from Congregated Settings, the National Housing Strategy for People with a Disability, the Transition to Personal Budgets for People with a Disability, the Value for Money Report, New Directions, and the Assisted Decision-Making Capacity Act in 2015 are all Irish examples of the shift towards a more inclusive Ireland, and individualised budgeting is just one cog in the wheel to fulfil this philosophy. What is happening at present? First, I would like to go through some current statistics with you and that are related to individualised budgeting. Currently in Ireland, there are 66,611 people documented as having an ID in Ireland, according to the CSO figures just released this month. This is 8,902 people more than recorded in the 2011 census. In comparison, there are 28,275 registered on the NIDD database, which is the National Intellectual Disability Database. Using the correct statistics is essential for planning for the future, and Doyle et al. 2017 would say the CSO figures are more realistic. However, the Irish government uses the NIDD and the NDA figures, which may have implications for implementation of individualised budgeting here in Ireland. Other statistics that are relevant for planning for the future: there are 195,263 unpaid carers here in Ireland. That's 4.1% of the population, which adds up to over 6.5 million hours per week. And when calculated at a minimum hourly rate, it adds up to over 61 million euros per week. This is relevant, as going from experience in the Netherlands, Van Geeken et al. 2012 highlighted the fact that personalised budgeting became unsustainable when the holders increased tenfold in 8 years of implementation. This was due to family members claiming as personal assistants on behalf of their children, which could happen here. Currently in Ireland, funds are distributed by the Department of Health through block funds, which the HSE allocates to the services through 4 regional areas. They're the West, South, Dublin North East and Dublin Mid Leinster. Then service level agreements or grant aid agreements are put in place with these services. These funds are allocated in respect of the service's needs, such as staff and overhead costs, whereas an individualised budget would be awarded based on the individual's needs. For this presentation, I looked at the National Disability Authority Working Paper 2012, which summarised international evidence on personal budgets. I also looked at Padraig Fleming's work, where he evaluated the implementation of 4 individualised funding initiatives for people with an ID here in Ireland, and this was published in 2016. I would like to acknowledge Padraig Fleming for allowing me to use this paper, which he sent to me, which highlights the challenges of implementing individualised funding and supports for disabled people here in Ireland. He has also just completed a systematic review on the international literature, but this won't be available until next year. Generally, there is very little literature available on individualised budgeting here in Ireland, but anything I have found I have put in the reference lists for you to use. What is an individualised budget? It is an umbrella term used to describe the process of acquiring personal supports using their own funds. Internationally, there are many different methods of accessing and managing an individualised budget. The ones used in the pilot projects here in Ireland were direct payment, and that was in AT Networks in Dublin, direct payment using a broker in Bridging the Gap in Donegal, independent support broker in Possibility Plus in Kildare, and self-management model in Community Connector in Kerry. Who is entitled to these funds? In Ireland now, people with disabilities don't have an automatic right to access an individualised budget, so they are not legally entitled to access one until the UNCRPD has been ratified. However, as can be seen from Fleming's evaluation of the pilot projects here in Ireland, there is flexibility in the traditional system, even though he would say accessing the funds or debundling them was one of the biggest barriers to the implementation. But as you can see, there were many more. Going by international practice and the literature available, they would say that people with chronic health conditions, sensory or intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities or mental health conditions, irrespective of age, gender or ethnicity, determined by an assessment completed by a statutory agency, are entitled to an individualised budget. Fleming found that a collaborative approach is needed for individualised budgeting to work, and natural supports are very important. It was shown in the pilot projects that the positives did outweigh the negatives. Okay, so what is the plan for the future? At the moment, there is a public consultation process being carried out through the Task Force on Personal Budgets, which will inform the Minister for Disabilities, Finnean McGrath, to develop plans to introduce a system of personal budgets in Ireland. The government has made a commitment in the programme for partnership government to introduce personal budgets and also to ratify the UNCRPD. Even though it's not clear what the personal funds will be used for here in Ireland, these are what it won't be used for: things not related to disability, day-to-day living costs, duplicates of other supports, and anything illegal or causing harm or risk to others. The traditional model of one size fits all should be eliminated when individualised budgeting is introduced. Currently, we are living through great changes, moving from an institutionalised, paternalistic and medicalised model of care to a person-centred, self-determined, holistic philosophy of care, which includes integration into mainstream community. These changes will involve more risk-taking, but how can one learn without some level of risk? The next time you go for a coffee and you make the choice of hazelnut or salt caramel flavour, think of the person with the intellectual disability and what supports they would need to make this simple choice. Yet, when they are given the choice, this gives them more control and in turn gives them more independence, which empowers them to become self-determined. It is all about person-centeredness and letting them achieve their own goals using their own funds. We must look at the past, the present, and as future RNIDs, we need to open our eyes and look into the future and be prepared for individualized budgeting because it is on the way. Thank you.